There always seems to be a battle in our shop. Good versus evil, lazy people versus the people that actually get things done, and moisture in our air system. I think I have a solution for you high volume or paint shops or even industrial applications with this Tsunami Regenerative Dryer. I'm Chad from Flash Performance. Let's check out the product. I'm doing more and more projects in the shop that require a higher volume of airflow, but not only a higher volume, but also the ability to keep that air dry through a long period of time. There are many solutions in the industry when it comes to dryer systems, but very few can keep up with the high demand of, say, a blast cabinet or sandblasting or volumes of air that are 100% duty cycle. Once the desiccant filters in most systems are saturated, they no longer can pull out that moisture. I reached out to the team at Tsunami Compressed Air Solutions because I was doing some research and found this unique setup, which is actually built for industrial applications. So let me go through the product with you and show you some of the things that I found super interesting that I think you may as well. We're going to start with the filtration system, or the pre-filters that come before the dryer system. And these pre-filters, you will notice, are much larger in size than other systems in the market, meaning they can contain much more of that contaminant or oil that's coming through into the system. Now, this system is part number 219990710, and I'll put that in the comments below, and that contains the pre-filters, the desiccant system, and the control board all as a system. Now, I didn't just choose this system out of thin air. With a quality product like this, you want to make sure that you get the right one for your application, because this is very customizable depending on your demand. So when I talked to the team at Tsunami, I gave them information about my shop and my situation. How big is my air compressor? What kind of CFM am I going to be flowing through this system? How far away is this system located from my compressor? What loads am I going to be putting on the system? And with that information, they were able to customize a package that made fit for my shop application. And one of the things that I was really impressed about is the volume of air that these systems can take. They sent me a spec sheet and they said, how much CFM are you running? And I was like, oh, a bunch, lots of it. So I started doing the research on my compressor and how much CFM it could push. Oh yeah, I wasn't even close to their limit. They can do up to 120 CFM of airflow through their customized systems because, as I'll show you in a second, it's not limited to 2 of the dryers. These are expandable and you can add much more. But okay, back to the pre-filters. So these are pre-filters. We have incoming air coming into this side. The first filter that's going to go through is going to be the automatic water separator. This is going to pull the big particles of water out. So this system forces that water down to the bottom to pull out that heavy moisture. The second one that is going to go through is going to be our oil separator. We want to pull all the oils and contaminants out of that system. So that was a big question of mine. Why do I need to pull oil out of the system if I don't have anything oiling into the system? Well, and that's a pretty common misconception because our compressor uses oil in the pistons, and when that piston is going up and down, some of that oil residue gets left behind and gets compressed into that airflow. So this contains that oil sediment and traps it into that pre-filter. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom that there are a couple of valves. Most of the time on most systems you have to depressurize your complete system and then go through and drain the moisture out or drain the contaminants out every once in a while. This system, we don't have to do that. It's all automatically done. With this control board, it will automatically cycle the valve at the bottom of these pre-filters. It will send that contaminant into an accumulator, and then an accumulator will reduce the pressure to be able to push that out into your OSHA approved oil content capturing, follow your local laws, do whatever they're supposed to do. But it allows that oil and moisture to be able to come out at a lower pressure, so you're not blowing off a whole bunch of pressure trying to get that moisture or oil contamination out. So these two pre-filters have changeable filters in them, of course, and according to the manufacturer specifications, it's going to tell you how often you should change those filters out depending on the flow of air that you have coming through. So a nice setup. All this is of aluminum, the aluminum blocks on the top as well, and it has 1-inch fittings coming through this entire system. I am not running the volume of air to use 1 inch, but by golly, I have it if I decide that I need it. So 1 inch all the way through the system, all the way out the other end. So let's look at the heart of the system. So the big part to this that really turned me on to this product was what they call a regenerative dryer. So you'll see that we have 2 dryers here on the front. They're not using a normal desiccant product in those because desiccant doesn't like to necessarily dissipate that moisture. You either have to replace it or bake it out and get a high temperature so that moisture will come out of that desiccant. So these aren't using that normal style of desiccant. But what we do is we have airflow coming into the unit. And that airflow will go into one of the dryers. Now remember, we've already pulled out that heavy moisture with the pre-filter. Now that is going to come into this dryer, and it's going to run through that dryer to pull all the small bits and particles of moisture out of that system. Now, if we're running a high volume of air, that can become saturated. So what this system does is it will automatically switch with this control board to a secondary drying system. Now think about this. This one is completely saturated or partially saturated, depending on how often we have to switch. But we now switch over to one that is completely dry. We can take a portion of that air, meter it to run it back through the primary dryer to be able to push that moisture back out. And on the bottom is another drain to be able to get that moisture out the bottom. So now we're running dry air while this one is drying, and then when this one gets saturated to a point, it will switch back over, and this one's completely dry, and it will just keep going like that, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is a modular setup. So these blocks on the bottom can be bolted together, and you can have many, many more of these connected together, and it will just start going down the line as they accumulate moisture and then dissipate moisture, accumulate moisture and dissipate moisture. Just an absolutely phenomenal concept to me to be able to do that process. Now, a couple of things that I'll point out to you that as I started this install process and tried to figure out how everything worked and how everything hooked up. You will notice on the sides that there is an in and out on both ends. That means that I can actually bring air in one side and push air out both sides. Or in my specific application, I have air coming in from this side, and I also need the air to go out that side. So I took a plug this side, and now air comes in and out on the same side. It's all dependent on your system and your setup as to what you may need. So there's one more piece to this system that I added. I decided to take one more step in the process to add another pre-filter. Let me show you why. So this is another pre-filter. This is going to be for oil contamination, to be able to capture any remaining oil that may be coming through the system. And this is going to go before my blast cabinet, because if you get oil coming through in your blast cabinet, it starts making all the stuff collect together. But this is also, if you're thinking industrial application, if you're thinking precision air that has to be controlled due to the standards that you're working with, whether it be a machine shop or a medical grade facility, this is our last stop in the process to make sure that we have 100% control of the air that's going through the system. So this is made by man, so that means that things or components may fail. So if a component in the process fails, let's say that this oil canister doesn't catch it all or fails in the process and oil contamination gets through. This is going to be our last check in that process to make sure that we don't have anything going that could contaminate our system. Now, is this overkill for what I'm doing? Yeah, it absolutely is. But for some of you, it may be exactly what you're looking for, and Tsunami Compressed Air Solutions has the kit, the design, and the products that I think you may be looking for. Because that's what I was looking for. So let's show you how this gets installed. So let me give you a lay of my shop and how this whole system kind of ties together. So I have an 80-gallon, 6-horsepower air compressor in another adjacent building. And that air comes in through this green line and comes into my shop air system, where this then feeds a reservoir tank in the shop. From that reservoir tank, it then goes into my old drying system. The challenge with that system was it couldn't fit in any of the space that I wanted it to, so it's kind of downstream. So I am running a couple of things that I don't necessarily like to not have pre-filtered. So I have like these cheap filtration systems on, like my balancer or my little machine shop over here underneath my mezzanine. So I want to put this Tsunami system here in this space. And it's not a lot of space that I have to work with. But you'll see that this bracket is provided with the kit. And that bracket allows our main drying system to be connected to the wall. So let me show you how that pieces together. So as you can see, it actually mounts on the wall pretty easy once you get the bracket on there. I have the pre-filters that are connected with a quick disconnect. And the reason that I connected them right away is because of how my air line is going to come in. And you'll notice that I don't have a lot of room on this side to be able to do anything. So that's where I showed you prior that you can take those plugs in and out to be able to configure how you want your air to work. Now, if I wanted to have a small air line coming off of one side, I can do that. Now, this is something that I didn't think of. Prior to this system and how it works, and that was, where is my regulator at? Because on most systems, the regulator is the first piece of that process, right? So we're trying to regulate that airflow down to push it through our system. And I've found on my current drying system that is my restriction. I'll be running a high volume of air, and then when I stop, you'll hear it catch up. I don't have to worry about that with this system because this is on the pressure side. I can run high pressure on this side of the drying system, and I can have my regulator way down the line if I wanted to. I can have multiple regulators that are regulating for each machine or section or part of the shop. Pretty darn cool feature. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to cut my shop feed system. I'm going to plumb it directly in to my dryer system and then out. So I'm just going to come up, I'm going to go through, and then come back up here. You don't necessarily care to see about that part. So let me get that part done. So I have the system all plumbed up and wired together, and now I'm charging the system. And one of the things that I really want to point out is make sure that you're prepared for this. So ear protection, eye protection. I've already had one line blow out where I didn't get it tight enough, and it was letting 150 PSI out, just shooting out, just echoing through the shop. So make sure you have your protection on as you're charging the system and getting this thing put together. So let me show you how the whole system is set up, and then I'll show you this process of what it's doing and the sounds that it'll make inside your shop. So the system is all plumbed in, ready to go. So, oh, making noises. Oh, there it goes again. Let it do its thing here. So incoming air comes in, goes through both pre-filters. and then through into the canisters. And then I do have the output line on the same side running up to the rest of the shop. And on the display, it does have the information of what's going on, and it just kind of does its own thing. So what I have noticed is that there's air that comes out of the little filters down here at the bottom whenever it needs to change over, and you can hear just a little bit of an air hiss going on through the system, and that is that air coming through to dry out the moisture capturing filter. So I have the two lines here that go to the bottom of the water separator and oil separator, and then that line goes up and overhead, and that goes to my reservoir tank. So I have a 60-gallon reservoir tank up there to be able to hold all the extra air pressure, and then that comes down to my regulator. Currently the regulator is not set very high, but that is also from Tsunami as well, to measure my air coming through and to regulate that coming out. Now notice that my reservoir tank up there is before the regulator. So now I have high pressure air before the regulator, and that is not going to be my limitation as far as getting airflow in. So then that just goes over to my connection where my tire changer and my other stuff is. I will also point out these clear hoses. Oh, making noise. Ran through a cycle, puffed air out. So I've noticed that whenever the air is flowing, it senses that air is moving through the system, that you'll hear it doing these regeneration cycles while it's going through that. So these clear hoses right here go down into your preferred catch can down here at the bottom. And make sure you have something there to be able to capture that oil and water that comes out of there. So my install is complete on my Tsunami compressed air system regenerative dryer, and I wanted to give you a little bit of my feedback and what I've noticed as I put this together. And then I do have some cheat sheet here when I was talking to the engineering team that I was trying to understand about the system and what makes it different and those kind of things. So first off, my impression, this is super crazy high quality, totally over the top for what I need to do in my shop. But if you are a company or an industry that needs to have dry air, and that is a super high factor for you, this system is going to knock it out of the park. No question about it. Second thing is this does make a little bit of noise. So it's always working itself. It's always drying air. It's always cycling. It's always draining. So if you are in an environment where it needs to be completely quiet and completely silent, you may put this closer to your compressor, which is fine, because that's actually one of the questions that I had for the team at Tsunami. Was a lot of times we are told that we need to have so much distance between our compressor and our dryer to be able to let that temperature change, right? To let that air cool down so the dryer can handle it. Well, that is the case, but this system here can actually hold up to or work up to 150 degree temperatures. So if we're coming right out of the compressor, we're still not that hot. So even if we are forced to have this right near the compressor or right by the compressor, this system can handle it with its ability to continuously drain and continuously control that airflow. This is a perfect system for that. You've been hearing a little bit of pops and crackles as I've been talking, and what that is that's releasing that moisture. It's just a controlled pressure of release. Unlike a tank drain where it's just a full on-off valve and it's letting high pressure air jump out, this system is bringing that moisture into a low volume or low pressure area in that accumulator right here, and that lets that release and not have that high blow-off pressure. So it's really controlling that pressure as we go. I guess the last piece that I really want to tell you is, where do you get it? So if you go to tsunami.us.com, you will be able to find their list of approved vendors to purchase this through. This is not a value system by any means. This is a high-end product. And they do have a wide range of different styles of products and different price points of products. But your best bet is to reach out to Tsunami directly. If you're thinking, I need a system for my manufacturing facility, I run high volumes of air, and I need something that's going to purify that air as it goes through. Reach out to them directly. They're happy to help you get the right system for you. I'm Chad with Flash Performance. Thanks for joining me. I will keep you up to date on the Tsunami system as I use it throughout the shop. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.